are good. It is 11:02 Mountain Standard Time. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Today we are here for the Arizona Commerce Authority, our BEAD project application guide webinar, and this session is specific to tribal nations and communities in Arizona. So thank you again for joining us. Go ahead and go to the next slide, please. So here's a quick overview of what we will be discussing today. And just as a reminder, this is for the BEAD application guidance. So if there are questions pertaining to pre-registration or the challenge process, we have hosted many sessions on those phases, and the webinars and resources available on our website will address your questions. Of course, you can also send us an email, but today we are focusing solely on the application process itself. So we just want to make sure everyone's on the same page with that. And then for questions today, we will be using the Q&A portion of the webinar. I did, I did make it so that everybody can use the chat right now. And what we'd love to have you do is put your name and the tribe or organization that you represent into the chat. So if you could do that, that helps us and everyone who is attending today to have an understanding of what our audience is. So go ahead and plug your name and your tribe or organization into the chat. And just to get everyone started, I will put mine in there. My name is Kelly Prusi, and I am the Community Engagement Manager from ACA. So if everyone can follow suit, that'd be great. I can see it's happening already. Great. So once we do this, I'll turn off the chat, and then the only way for communication to happen today will be through that Q&A, and we will keep an eye on those questions as they come in. We want to make sure that we provide detailed answers to everything, and that all of that, again, will go through that Q&A portion. All right, so as far as the topics that we will be covering today, and even before we do that, let me do quick introductions for us. So you are putting your name and information into the chat, which is great. I will also do that for those of us that you can see on the screen, our panelists today. And I'll start with Arizona Commerce Authority. We have Sandy Bomick, who is joining. He's not quite here yet. He's our State Broadband Director. We have Amy Dorman, our Deputy Director. She's waving there on the screen. We also have Jamie Garrett from the State Broadband Office. She's our Senior Broadband Program Manager. And we also have, I'd like to introduce Okasana Beatty. And actually, Okasana, if you could unmute yourself and introduce yourself, that would be great, because Okasana is new and we are incredibly grateful and excited to have her.
Thank you, Kelly. What is it? Still morning. Good morning, everyone. Okasana Beatty here, a new tribal liaison with the Arizona Commerce Authority. Welcome.
So again, Okasana is our new tribal liaison. This is very exciting for us, and we're thrilled to have Okasana. And for all the tribal nations and communities on the call, you will be hearing from Okasana. And again, we're thrilled to have her. And then also we have from KPMG, we've got Iris, James, and Divya, and they are our experts who will be guiding us through some of the agenda items, the table of contents that you see on the screen. And last but not least is Richmond Hahn from Ready, who will be driving us through the portal itself. All right, so let's go ahead and start. We will dig into the slides, and for reference, everything that we share today will be available on our website. So the deck that we present and also the recording of this webinar will be available on the website. We'll get the deck up today. The recording will be available next week. Okay, so quick overview before we dig into the application. And just as a reminder for everyone of BEAD, we all are familiar with the BEAD program, and Arizona has been allocated almost $1 billion in funding, which is historic and exciting for our state. This comes from the NTIA. And the program itself is and the funding is to support the deployment of broadband service to unserved and underserved BSLs and eligible CIAs throughout the state. And as a reminder, unserved is 25 down, 3 up. Underserved is 100 down and 20 up. And the criteria, as you can see in the right-hand section of the slide there, the criteria for applying for a project area. Applicants must serve every unserved and underserved BSL within a location. Applications that cover all eligible BSLs and the maximum number of CAIs will score higher. And then partnerships. Partnerships are encouraged. And if you are partnering, there just has to be one lead subgrantee responsible for the project execution. And then for BEAD applicants, there are mapping tools and geospatial files that are available on the website as you go through the application process. Next slide, please. All right, the subgrantee selection process. So a high-level overview is ACA has designed a comprehensive and transparent selection process. Again, this is $1 billion, 993 to be exact, 993 million to be exact. And the process is aimed at selecting the most qualified applicants for broadband deployment in Arizona. And this is divided into two phases. Phase one was market sounding, which we have completed already, and then pre-registration, and that is in progress right now. So you will recall, and everyone is aware, that in order to be eligible to apply for BEAD funding, you have to complete that pre-registration process. So that process is happening right now, and we have been recommending since the process opened on November 4th that completing that pre-registration is recommended before the window opens on Monday, January 6th. So I think some of you are still in the queue waiting to be approved, and you should expect that approval soon. And that approval will come via email. And then there's phase two. Pre-registered applicants can submit applications for round one beginning January 6th. And then the review process. And that's when we will evaluate the applications based on the criteria that are outlined in the BEAD NOFO and in the scoring rubric, which is a part of the initial proposal, volume 2. Next slide, please. All right, our timeline. So the timeline here, we've got, if you look on the left side, there are 3 different colors. And the first one at the top is the pre-reg. So again, this is required of every BEAD applicant. If you are intending to apply for BEAD funds, the pre-registration must be completed. And then beneath that, you'll see round 1. So round 1 for the BEAD application window, this does open this Monday, January 6th. And it will stay open until February 5th. And then round 2, the dates for that will be April 12th through May 2nd. So pre-registration does stay open that entire time, but again, we are encouraging all applicants to submit in round 1, and that round 1 will open this Monday, January 6th. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so we've got the project application overview. Before I turn it over to KPMG, just a reminder here, I'm going to disable the chat. So now the function and way for you to submit your questions will be through that Q&A. So if you have questions at any point in time, please put it into the Q&A. I've tried to arrange the settings so that you can upvote somebody else's question. If you think that's a good one and you agree with it, you should be able to see every question that has been submitted through that Q&A. And that's what we will keep track of and monitor throughout the session. We will try to address them as they come through, and then we will pause at certain points throughout the presentation to make sure that we are pausing and allowing time for those questions. Our goal here is to make sure that your questions are answered, you have the information you need, and there's a lot of information to get to, so I'm going to toss it over to Iris, who will get us started. Thanks.
Thanks, Kelly. All right, let's talk about project application. So before we dive into each section and talk about all the details, just wanted to provide an overview and highlight some key requirements. So first and foremost, just wanted to reiterate that you have to have your pre-registration application submitted and approved by ACA before you can access the financial information on project areas, which will be available on January 6th. And also wanted to point out that some of the pre-registration application, they're approved conditionally. That means we have RFCs, requests for clarifications or revisions noted for your pre-registration application. Please make sure to address those RFCs before you submit your project application. So you'll be able to view the financial data on the portal as long as it's approved by ACA, but we ask that you address the RFCs before you submit your project application. For each project area, you have to submit a separate project application. So that means if you plan on submitting, you plan on proposing to serve adjacent project areas, multiple project areas, you have to submit multiple project applications because they'll be scored independently. For example, if a county is divided into 4 project areas and you're proposing to serve all of them, you'll have to submit 4 applications. And because they're scored independently, so they may not all be awarded to you. At the end of round 1, we will do our review and assessment and we'll make tentative awards. So that brings us to proposed technology type. For each project area, you will see 2 options. Part A is 100% fiber. Part B is fiber, reliable, and alternative technologies. You'll have the option to provide technology solutions for either Part A or Part B or both. And we strongly encourage that you provide both. And the reason why is, although we're accepting applications for both 100% fiber and mixed technologies, we're only evaluating 100% fiber, which is Part A, during round 1 application. And that means if you are providing solution for Part B only, that project area may not be available during round 2. So we'll talk more about the breakdown in Part A and outliers in the slides below, but this is just an overview of the project application. So if there are no questions, we can move on to the next slide. Okay, so our project application form on the portal is broken out into 18 sections. And just wanted to highlight that sections 1, applicant information, and section 17, cybersecurity compliance and supply chain risk management compliance. These 2 sections you only need to complete once. So if you're planning to submit multiple applications, you only need to complete sections 1 and 17 once. And when you submit your second or third application, these 2 sections will be auto-populated for you. However, for the rest of the sections, please make sure that you only provide project-specific information for sections 2 through 16 and 18. And also for proposed technology that's included in section 4 and 12, please provide each proposed technology for the proposed project area, which is 100% fiber or fiber plus other alternative technologies. Right, we can move on to, okay. So now we can dive into the details about our 18 sections, starting from 1.1 and 1.2. And also note that under each section title, we also included links to our application questionnaire and our application guide. So if you click on the link and reference the sections there, you can find relevant information for each section on this deck. So for section 1.1, applicant information, so this section will ask you to provide your legal name, entity name, and mailing address. We'll also ask you to provide your contact details. It has to be a director or officer level from your organization. We'll also ask you to provide your unique entity ID, state tax ID, broadband provider, and service provider types. And if you are able to provide details on your consortium and partnership entities, we'll ask you to provide a narrative that explains the organizational structure, role, relationship, and significance of each partnership entity. The narrative will also have to demonstrate your individual expertise and how you have the sufficient working capital to successfully complete the project. And also we'll ask you to provide details of any underlying agreements among your partnership organizations. For any contractors or subcontractors that you will be using in this section, we'll ask you to provide details of at least one example of each contractor and subcontractor's past experience in completing a similar project. For section 1.2, the project executive summary, this is where we'll ask you to provide a high-level summary of each project area. That includes the BEAD eligible locations that you're proposing to serve, proposed technology. If you're proposing part B, which is not 100% fiber, we'll ask you to provide the percentage breakdown. We'll also ask you to provide delivery approach and timeline, budget summary, and match request. So a little bit of details on the part A and part B, 100% fiber and fiber plus alternative technologies. For part A, we further break it down into A1 and A2. So A1 will be 100% fiber that includes all the CAIs and outliers. And A2 will be 100% fiber that includes CAIs, but excluding the outliers. And then part B will be fiber plus any other reliable or alternative technologies. All right. So moving on to section 1.3, project areas. So our final project areas have been posted on December 23rd. These have been updated based on your feedback from market sounding. So just wanted to reiterate that each project area, you have to submit a separate application and they will be scored independently. So when you go on the portal, you will see a drop-down list of each project area. And when you click on the project area, it will show you the cost estimation. And just wanted to repeat myself again that the only way to see the cost estimation is if your pre-registration application has been submitted and approved by ACA. And based on the project areas that you selected, the portal will update and show you the total number of BEAD eligible BSLs, including unserved and underserved locations. It will also show you the total number of eligible CAI locations. And the CAI locations, when you select, when you submit your application, there will be options for you to deselect the CAI locations. And we'll show more about project areas and how to work the portal later. And we can move on to the next section. So this is section 1.4, project infrastructure. So for all the projects available, they are broken into priority and non-priority projects. Priority projects are defined as the ones that offer the high quality broadband services that meet specific performance thresholds that's based on the BEAD NOFO. And the priority projects are also the ones that provide services via end-to-end fiber optic facilities to reach end users. Non-priority projects are defined as all other last mile deployment projects providing a minimum speed of 100/20 Mbps. So although the design is for all the priority projects to receive 100% fiber and non-priority projects to receive fiber plus other technologies, applicants will have the option to select either technology for priority projects or non-priority projects. But I do want to emphasize that ACA has a strong preference towards end-to-end fiber solutions for all the priority projects. And for infrastructure and technology, you'll be required to provide information such as total miles of conduits or cables to be deployed, or total number of towers to be built. And you can find more information. There's a longer list in our application guide. And finally, for the technology and performance section, for priority projects, we'll be asked to provide technology using the FCC code and the split ratio for deployment. And if the same split ratio is not used across deployment, you'll be asked to provide reasons and the nodes that do not conform to it. For non-priority broadband projects, you'll also be asked to provide the technology using FCC's code. And then you'll also be asked to provide maximum upload and download speed per sector, the maximum number of subscribers per sector, and if you're proposing wireless-based technology, the spectrum band. Next slide.
Iris, I'm going to just pause really quickly and see if there are any questions. Make sure that folks know they can put them into the QA, and you will answer them as quickly as possible. So again, don't forget, ask questions at any time, and we'll stop periodically as well, just to make sure that any questions you have are getting addressed. All right, thanks, Iris. Go ahead.
All right. For section 1.5, open access network options, this is where we'll ask you to confirm if your organization intends to offer an open access network. And if you do, we'll ask you to provide a narrative about your open access policy. And there are more details and more requirements where you can find in our application guide. For 1.6, network design, this is where we'll ask you to submit a high-level network design. And this network design will have to show that you're delivering broadband service that meets or exceeds the performance requirements for all the locations in your selected project area. And this network design also has to be certified by a professional engineer during application when you submit the network design. And if the professional engineer, the PE, is not licensed in Arizona, then you'll have to indicate if you plan to utilize the BEAD waiver for PE certification. And then lastly, outliers. So outliers are defined as those locations that will cost 1.5 times more than the rest of the BSLs in the selected project area. So those are defined as outliers and can be excluded in your A2 technology solution. And when there are outliers identified by you, you are required to provide details on the proposed technology and cost to serve those outliers. And this should be included in the financial workbook, which you can find on the portal. So those will be attachment 8A and 8B. I'll pause for any questions. Oh, I see there are two.
Okay, yep, there are two in here. First one from Vanessa and Madison, if you could both add what tribe or organization you're representing as well, that's helpful for us to know. So please add those into the Q&A. And the first question from Vanessa is, for a majority of the requirements, tribal applicants need to upload or describe policies. Do you have sample templates for some of these? Question.
Divya, I don't know if
yeah,
we have provided.
Hello?
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to see how I could be helpful.
Oh, well,
I can take
the
the questions.
Yeah,
So
and it
what
looks
is the
like
question?
this individual is from Tribal Ready. For a majority of the requirements, tribal applicants need to upload or describe policies. Do you have sample templates for some of these?
We don't. This policies mostly is derived by the potential subgrantees. So in this case, if the tribal applicant, tribal government is the applicant or tribe itself is the applicant, that need to come from the potential subgrantees.
Great. Okay. Next question is from Madison Capabianco from Monty R. Lee and Company. To clarify, are the priority projects solely end-to-end fiber projects?
Yes, so for round one, the priority projects are all solely end-to-end fiber. That does not mean that you are required to submit a solely end-to-end fiber project in round one. But anything, if you are submitting a hybrid application, to give you an example, you can submit an optimal design with 80% fiber within a project area, which in this case, within a tribe, and then 20% in fixed wireless. We will just evaluate that application in round two, but you can in advance submit that in round one. So it's not like we will not accept any application which is not end-to-end fiber connectivity. We'll just accept it and evaluate that into a different round, but you are most welcome to submit that in round one.
Okay, I think that is it for all the questions in the chat. Thank you, Sandeep, Amy, Iris, Divya for answering, and we can move on to the next slide.
All right, thank you, Kelly. So now that the stage is set for the application, I'll dive into the next sections of the application. The next one is the scalability and resiliency. So this would involve three different sections, subsections. The first one would be applicants are required to provide information regarding the scalability and resiliency of their networks for each project area in the application. This would involve a description of the redundancies in both the network and power sources for no less than 50% of the BEAD eligible locations included within the scope. Applicants will also explain how the proposed network design guarantees scalability to accommodate the connectivity needs of the project area over the network's entire lifespan. Based on that, applicants must outline the organizational strategy for also retrofitting or hardening the current broadband infrastructure to resist potential damage and degradation due to climate threat. The next section under this is the network outages section, where applicants must confirm that appropriate measures will be taken to ensure that the network's outages do not exceed, on an average, 48 hours over a 365-day period, except in the cases of natural disasters or force majeure occurrences. Here, the applicants will describe the network design and the measures that the organization is planning to take to meet this requirement. And in case the applicants are unable to meet this requirement, they must provide an explanation for the same. The third one under this is the climate assessment section, where applicants will provide an initial assessment of the potential climate risk impacting the proposed project. And based on the identified risk, applicants will describe how the network design will recover rapidly from the disruptions caused by the climate conditions. This would involve describing the strategies that the organization plans to adopt. It could be including flood damaging resistance or including design of self-healing topologies and things like that. Following that, the applicants will be required to provide any network resiliency climate readiness assessment that the organization has undertaken in terms of identifying risk and having any processes, plans, or procedures in place for withstanding these kind of climate threats, and also planning mitigation plans to address all of them. Following this is the next section, which is also on the environmental section. So this would be in terms of compliance to NEPA and NHPA. So the first section under this is where applicants will provide a high-level description of the site and the surrounding areas to identify any man-made geographical, physical, or any factors that might pose a risk to the development and project, including flood-related areas and impacted wetland or waterways impacted by the area. The second one would be based on this identification, the applicants will provide a plan on how the project will be implemented to remain compliant with the State Historical Preservation Act, the NEPA requirements, and the NHPA requirements, and will also provide plans to minimize adverse environmental or historical preservation impacts. The next one under this is the Make Ready section, where applicants must describe the Make Ready activities that the organization already has or planning to have for undertaking this project. This could involve trying to get an access to right of way, or preparing some engineering designs, or surveying the site and other related activities for project preparedness. The third one under this, after following this, is the timeline section, where applicants will be required to provide a narrative highlighting the key milestones and the number of months required for the deployment of the project right from the grant award. And there will also be templates provided in this section for the project schedules, where applicants can fill in those details with the key implementation phases, both for part A and or part B, and upload it accordingly. The third one is a certification under this, where applicants will be required to confirm that the deployment will be provided within 4 years from the award of the grant agreement. I can pause that and take any questions. I think we have a question here.
Yes, there is one in the chat. So if Sandeep is available, this is from John Moody with Tohono O'odham Utility Authority. What to do about already funded BSL and BSLs that are not correct? Parentheses, no household at the BSL.
So John, I'm trying to find an answer. So there are two parts of this question. So before we put together the whole BEAD eligible areas in any project area, we went through a deduplication process with NTIA. That process kind of forces us to take any funded broadband serviceable location through any state fund, federal fund, TBCP grants, or any other grant from any federal agencies to take it off if it's meeting 100 by 20 requirement. That's mean 100 Mbps download and 20 Mbps upload. So the locations you will be seeing in this portal is strictly eligible for BEAD and not funded by any other funding. Does that mean that location cannot be funded in future when we are going through this procurement? Yes, it can be. The TBCP round 2, which a lot of tribe already applied, is still pending with NTI, and NTI is slow rolling those awards. I think I saw a couple of award made in last couple of weeks. So that might happen. But as of this point, as an applicant, we highly encourage you to apply for all the BSLs within the tribal project areas. And we can go through another round of deduplication later on once the award is met. Or if that location is not a household, we are calling those as a haywire. That's the NTIA term. We can also deduplicate that or correct those data or refresh those data once the award is met. But as of this point, please respond to all the BSLs within that project area. I'm assuming you are working for Tohono O'odham. So I would highly recommend do not leave a single BSL behind. Apply for everything, and we can go through the data sorting later on in future.
Great. All right, that's it for the questions. We're caught up on those, but again, any questions, please plug those into the Q&A and we will be sure to get to them. Thanks, Divya.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelly. So the next section is the barriers and permitting requirements section. So under this section, there are 4 different categories. One is the state of Arizona managed lands. The second one is the federal government managed lands. The third one is tribal nations managed lands. And the fourth one is local government managed lands. So applicants will be required to identify any critical crossings or permits related to their project area under this section. Based on that selection, applicants will provide a narrative describing these permits or critical crossings and identify any other barriers that would be responsible for the broadband deployment project. Within this narrative, the applicants will also describe how they would overcome these barriers and also provide more information on any supply issues that they might face and what plan they would deploy to overcome them, including any workforce related issues. The next section is the project financial section. The first subsection under this is the letter of credit requirements. So as per BEAD NOFO, all applicants are required to provide an LOC from a bank for 25% of the sub-award amount prior to signing of the grant agreement. So the first option under this would be that an applicant can choose to select this option. And once selecting this option, the applicant will be required to provide a commitment letter from a bank committing to issue this LOC for 25% during the signing of the grant agreement. If the applicants are not planning to choose this option, there are also 3 other options based on the NTIA BEAD programmatic waiver for LOC, where the second option is obtaining an LOC from a credit union instead of a bank. So if the applicants plan to choose this option, they can indicate that in the application, and then they'll be required to provide a letter from the credit union committing to issue this LOC prior to signing of the grant agreement. The third one under this option is obtaining a performance bond instead of an LOC. So if the applicant doesn't choose to provide an LOC from a bank or a credit union, they can provide a performance bond for 100% of the sub-award. And if the applicants choose this option, they will have to provide a letter from an acceptable surety committing to issue this performance bond prior to signing of the grant agreement. And the last option under this is that the subgrantee can choose to provide either an LOC or a performance bond for 10% of the sub-award amount. And if the applicant chose this option, then they'll have to provide a commitment letter either from a bank or from a performance security committing to issue 10% of the LOC or the performance bond. So it's important to note here that out of these 4 options, the applicants can choose one, and they're not required to provide the actual letter of credit during the project application. It's just the commitment letters based on the option chosen. The actual LOC or the performance bond will be provided prior to the signing of the grant agreement. Following this is the project match and match funding details section, where the applicants must provide a summary of the project cost and the match details, which would include the total project cost, the total grant amount requested, and the total match amount. As we know that under BEAD NOFO, the minimum requirement of match is 25%. But we also have an additional section where if your project involves any high cost locations defined by NTIA, then the applicants will have an option to choose to apply for the BEAD match waiver. However, all applicants are encouraged to provide a minimum of 25%, and the actual waiver approval will be at the discretion of ACA and from the approval from the Assistant Secretary. The next section under this is the project financial section. So based on the options that we discussed initially, which is Part A and Part B. So here there would be 2 different sections, one for Part A and Part B. And under Part A, the applicants will be required to provide 3 different information. The first one is an average cost to serve per location based on fiber-based deployment for all unserved and underserved BSLs. The second one would be the average cost to serve per location for CAI using fiber technology. And the last one is average cost to serve outliers using fiber technology. So based on these 3 indicators within the Part A section, the total project cost for A1, which is including CAIs and outliers, and A2, which is including CAIs and excluding outliers, will be auto-populated on the portal. Following that is the Part B section, which is a mixed technology deployment option, where the applicants will have option to provide 3 different kinds of information. One is the average cost to serve per location using fiber-only BSLs and CIs. So the applicants can indicate the number of BSLs to be deployed through fiber and the average cost to serve them. The second one is the average cost to serve select BSLs using reliable or alternative technology. So applicants will have the option to indicate the number of BSLs and the average cost to serve using a reliable or alternative technology that they chose. And the last one, wherever it's applicable, if the project area has high cost locations or outliers, then the applicant can indicate those outliers within this section and the average cost to serve each location. The total project cost for Part B will be auto-calculated based on that. Following that is the project financial workbook section. So based on all these inputs that the applicants provide, they'll also be required to download a workbook template that will be available on the portal and include all project-related financial information, not limited to budget information, cost estimation, matching funds, and pro forma financials and cash flow. Based on those inputs provided, there will also be a narrative section where the applicants will describe how the assumptions and how they plan to include any sustainability analysis within the financial inputs provided. The next one. So after project financials, there's the project workforce section. These are all based on BEAD NOFA requirements and also included as part of scoring criteria in ACS Volume 2. So these are narrative responses. The first one would involve providing a narrative on demonstrating commitment to ensuring equitable workforce development and job quality. So this would involve providing information about training providers, partnerships with training providers, and encouraging lower categories to participate, and also ensuring to get licenses and certifications for the workforce. Following that is the Fair Labor and Employment Law section, which was also a part of pre-registration. So applicants who are provided this as part of the pre-registration application can indicate that here, and they won't be required to fill this section. If not, and if they have identified contractors and subcontractors, they can provide that information here in terms of certifications for compliance and also any other additional information that they can provide. The next one is the workforce arrangement, where the applicants must confirm if they plan to use a directly contracted workforce, directly employed workforce, or a subcontracted workforce, or a combination of both. And based on that option selected, they'll have to provide a narrative on the different wage structures that the organization is proposing to employ. Following that is the appropriately compensated workforce. Under this, the applicants will have three different options. One is adherence to Davis-Bacon Act. Second one is adherence to the state prevailing wage laws. Or the third one is certifying to provide a project employment and local impact report during the execution of the grant agreement. Based on the option selected here, they can provide a narrative on how they plan to ensure compliance to these applicable wage laws. Following that is the project labor agreement, where the applicants must confirm whether their application will include a project labor agreement and provide details about that. And following that is the local hire provisions, which is also a part of the scoring criteria. Here, applicants will be required to describe their approach in prioritizing local hires for the project deployment. And following that is a unionized neutrality section, where applicants will be required to provide more information on a written policy or on union neutrality. Next slide.
As you're going to the next slide, there is another question from Travel Ready. Are tribally wages allowed in lieu of Davis-Bacon?
Kelly, I'll take that question. So we can answer that question in two ways. So you can either, as a participant of this BEAD program, you can sign a Davis-Bacon certification that you are going to follow the Davis-Bacon guideline when you are paying contractors or your employees when you are deploying this broadband project or receiving broadband funding. That's one option. Otherwise, you can submit an assessment using the guideline from US Treasury based on the zip code and send it to us, and we can stamp on it and we can agree on that. So the simple way to do that is kind of agreeing on the Davis-Bacon.
Thank you. No other questions at this time.
All right, so I'll take up the next slide. So following these requirements, the next set of requirements are providing narratives on these further subcategories. The first one is the labor peace agreement. So applicants must confirm the organization commits to use of labor peace agreements and provide plans to address that requirement. Following that is the appropriately skilled workforce section, where applicants must provide plans regarding ensuring skilled workforce. It could be in terms of joint labor management training programs, or encouraging registered apprenticeships, or engaging with other employers and unions to kind of get the skilled workforce included in the project. The other one is the appropriately credentialed workforce, where applicants must provide a narrative outlining the credential verification process, introducing a credential passport system, and recognition of prior learning for credentials. Following that is a misclassification of workers. So applicants must provide a description how they plan to ensure misclassification of workers during the project deployment. And the other one following that is a unionized workforce. So applicants will be required to indicate if the applicants or the subcontractors and contractors workforce is unionized. If not, then they will be required to provide the workforce plan and the project continuity plan. So the workforce plan would include the applicant to provide a clear breakdown of the FTE roles and the required certifications and relevant skills that the applicant would be looking for. And the project continuity plan is basically describing how they will ensure the supply of skilled and credentials workforce throughout the project. And the next section is the local support and community engagement. So this is also a part of the scoring criteria, where the applicants must engage in consultations with the local units of governments and or tribal nations that intersect their project area. And based on those consultations, the applicants will be required to provide two things. One is the letters of support. So that could provide a confirmation that any financial commitments from the relevant local or tribal government or any direct or in-kind commitments that's been provided with the letters of support. Following that is the applicant will be required to provide the engagement plan to support the coordination with the local and tribal communities in the government. This could include organization of meetings, development of outreach materials, and things specific to that. And both of these responses will be scored. The next section is the affordability section. So within this section, the applicants will be able to provide the cost to serve, affordable total price for priority projects and non-priority projects, which has applicable. Here, the price must include all recurring charges to subscribers, including all taxes, fees, and charges imposed to the subscribers. So for priority projects, it would be the affordable total price for 1 Gbps symmetrical service for 5 years after the project completion. And for non-priority, it will be 100 by 20 Mbps for 5 years after project completion. Based on the price details provided here, the next section would be complying to providing a low-cost broadband service option, where applicants must confirm participation in a subsidy program, including providing any additional details on the service plan with subscriber requirements, speed, latency costs, and any other subsidies available to subscribers. This will also include a requirement to detail out the marketing plan and outreach plan for the low-cost broadband option that they propose to serve. Following this is also a service characteristic requirement section, which is more of a checkbox section in terms of complying with the low-cost broadband service option requirements, which is about $30 per month, but not exceeding $50 per month. And in case the applicants are not able to confirm that, then they'll have an option to indicate that they plan to apply for the waiver, but they'll also be required to include more information on how this waiver is going to benefit the public as a whole in terms of reaching the broader policy goals or societal needs. And ACA will decide accordingly.
All right, Divya, we've got, and Sandy, 2 questions from Tribal Ready in the chat. The first is, can you give an example of misclassification of workers? And the second is this not related? Does this mean the tribe will need to provide a letter of support for themselves as they are the applicant?
I can take the second question, and Divya, if you can take the first question, that would be great. So if to give you an example, in this case, this question can be answered in a different way. If a tribal utility wing is applying for the BEAD funding, meaning a lot of the tribes here in Arizona, actually a couple of them, has a tribal utility wing which is trying to reintroduce themselves as a internet service provider as well. If it's a different than the government, yes, you will be needing a letter of support, or you can get your council's approval or president's approval or governor's approval or any tribal leader's approval as the letter of support and attach that in the application. If you are an ISP who's applying on behalf of a tribe, yes, you will need letter of support and the approval from the tribal government. Again, those are good to have. We as a state broadband office will seek the tribal consent from the tribal leaders anyway, so that we can deploy BEAD funding on tribal lands. But your letter of support is a little bit different than letter of support for other non-tribal project area, where multiple ISP will basically compete with each other for due to the procurement purposes. For tribes, it's most probably kind of like authorization, that I'm authorizing this ISP or I'm authorizing this tribal entity to apply for BEAD funding on behalf of this specific tribe.
All right, so for the first question, so all of these are part of ensuring an equitable workforce development and job quality requirements as per BEAD NOFO. So here applicants will be required to provide what plans they would ensure to prevent the misclassification of workers. This means providing detailed information on workforce classification methodologies to ensure that the underrepresented groups have an option to, be a part of the workforce, or the relevant credentials or certifications are in place to ensure there's an access to training programs, or there's a partnership with training providers or different local employer unions. So it's more on that. So it's basically indicating that it's a narrative to kind of committing that they would prevent misclassification of workers for ensuring access to workforce for all levels of workers in the state, including the underrepresented groups. Okay.
Thank you, Divya.
So this section is on compliance for MB, WB, and LSF inclusion. So this would require the applicants to provide a narrative on how they would ensure these firms are represented on the solicitation list, and how they would include them in terms of narratives across these 4 categories in terms of program development and implementation, outreach and partnerships, monitoring evaluation in terms of developing KPIs for ensuring their participation during these projects across wherever applicable, and then reporting and documentation of involving these kinds of firms. It's providing an equal opportunity to all kinds of firms to be a part of this project and providing plans on ensuring that. The next one is cybersecurity and supply chain risk management compliance. So this was also a part of pre-registration, and applicants who have provided this as part of pre-registration can tick that box within the application portal, and they will not be required to provide this information. But if not, whichever applicants have not provided it before, they will have the opportunity to provide it now. And it's important to note that the most updated cybersecurity and supply chain risk management plans have to be provided prior to signing of the grant agreement after award. And following this is the certification section. So this is the last section of the application on the portal, which are divided into different kinds of certification in terms of ensuring compliance to BEAD NOFO, FCC regulations, NEPA and HPA requirements, and other ACA specific procurement rules and processes. So the applicants will be required to provide a check across all these certifications for completing the whole application. With this, we complete the description of all the sections, and I'll hand over this to Richmond to walk you through the portal.
Richmond, hold on. Before you dive in, I just do want to acknowledge that it is almost 12 o'clock Mountain Standard Time, and I know we said this was 1 hour. We are going to go over on time today. So if you're able to stay on past 12 o'clock, we will conclude before 12:30. We know that for sure. If you're not able to and you have to drop off for other meetings, please know 2 things. One, we will record this, post it on our website next week. Also, we are hosting this same session again next week on the 8th. So I will post the links in the chat for you to be able to access the registration for next week's session. Thanks. Go ahead, Richmond.
All right. So once if you've Arizona has on their website a registration page to register for portal access. The first step to accessing a BEAD application would be completing pre-registration. If you've already done that, you'll receive a email notification when it's qualified, and you'll also be able to see that in the portal. This is what you will see on Monday when the portal is open. So if you log in now, it'll look a little different. But when you return on Monday, if that pre-registration is already qualified, then you'll be able to see this BEAD Applications module, and you'll also be able to see it right here. Going back to the homepage, I also want to flag that you can invite teammates from here. This can absolutely be consultants, anyone who's part of your strategy for applying for these grants can join your team and participate on the application. When I'm on, these are all the applications that I have in process. You can see these ones have been submitted and are now uneditable. For any of the other ones that I've started in the past, I can either edit the application, or if I decided to go in a completely different direction, I can delete it. I'm going to start a new application. The first thing you'll see is you're dropped into this map area. You can select a project area, one per application, as has been prescribed. If you select two, you'll receive an error and not be able to move on. Once you have selected one, you'll be able to see this will say selected project areas. This is a test instance. You'll be able to see the eligible locations, the breakdown, and also the reference price for that project area. So that can help guide how you would like to put together your application. I also want to call attention to over here on the left side, there's a legend where you can do a bit of manipulation, kind of zone in on stuff. Using the resources ACA has provided for the project areas, you certainly would be able to do a lot more in your geospatial tools. But this is just here to assist you and give you a little bit of insight. Once I can see all the required locations, I can click them to zoom in on that location. For the community anchor institutions, if they have a Fabric ID, we'll display that, and you can look at any of these as well. I need to move myself. And then if you decide the select project area, if you decide that you want to go back and choose a different project area, that's what that's for. And then from here, I would recommend having the ACA application guidance document that I'm sure has been linked in the chat and discussed open next to this, because they move in the exact same order through the questions. So that's a great resource to have. Just briefly, up in the top, you can see the sections that we just went through in detail. And then over here, you can see the subsections. So there's a couple ways you can move through. One is just to fill out the information, then click next, and it will take you to the next subsection. Or if you're working with a team and maybe your portion is the project infrastructure or something like that, you can click directly into that area and do your part. You can save the application. We recommend doing that often, just like with anything else you may be working with. The types of questions, there are, some that you click, some that you select, short answer, long answer, some where you are required to upload documents, and some where we provide a template for you to download, fill out, and resubmit. As terms for file size for what you upload, we try to strike the best balance we can between allowing you the greatest leeway possible and also making sure that it can be uploaded and downloaded and used by the ACA team in a timely manner. So if you have any issues uploading a file or any issues throughout this application, I will put our technical email in the chat as soon as I am done speaking, and you can reach out to that. We'll work with you for your email. We're happy to set up a call if that's what's necessary, anything to help you with these technical issues. And then if you have any issues on the policy or any policy questions, those would be best directed towards ACA and their contact email. A couple other things I wanted to flag was that if I go back to the map, I can zoom in with the plus and minus or with my cursor. And throughout the application, if this should be done on this should not be attempted on mobile. It is too complicated for that. But if you're using a smaller laptop and you're struggling with the horizontal space, you can use the command or control plus and minus to make the application bigger or smaller to suit your needs as you're moving through. Again, you can move through the questions up here or by clicking through. When you see this green check mark, that means that that section has been completed. So if you arrive at the review and submit, and this is grayed out, you can look up here and find the section without the green check mark, and that has at least one required question that you have not answered. And then the required questions are marked with the typical red asterisk that you see kind of universally. And then the last thing I will call out here is that once you finish your application, you can download a PDF of it for your records. That's again a brief overview. If you have any questions throughout that process, I will put that help email in, and we will be there to support you. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Richmond. He's going to plug that portal help email into the chat, and I will plug in our email as well, which is broadband@azcommerce.com. So this does conclude this guidance webinar. We can stay on a little bit longer for any questions. Again, we want to make sure that we get those answered. But I have plugged in many links into the chat. Again, this recording and the deck will be posted on our website. I'll get the deck up today. The recording will be next week. We have another session next week. A repeat of this same session is on January 8th. I did plug that into the chat. So essentially, if you go to the main website, which is the azcommerce/broadband initiative/BEAD, I put the link in the chat many times. Click on the subgrantee application tab and scroll through that page. All of the documents we've referenced, the webinars we've referenced, the maps we've referenced, they all live on that page. So just be sure to click on the subgrantee application tab. You can find everything there. You can also find webinars. We do post every webinar that we've recorded lives in there as well. And then also there are registrations for upcoming webinars. One other thing I want to note before we end the call today is that we are hosting, in addition to a repeat of this session, beginning on the 14th, January 14th, which is a Tuesday, we will host weekly technical assistance sessions. So, and that will go through round one of the application window. So beginning on the 14th and ending on February 4th, those will be 45-minute sessions designed to answer technical questions only. Because we are in the procurement window, we will be addressing only the technical aspects. But those are an opportunity for you to come in and ask questions and get live help and responses if you are having any technical issues whatsoever. So I think I've discussed everything that I needed to add. Just want to make sure that KPMG, Ready, and ACA have an opportunity to add anything that I may have missed. Okay. Well, like we said, the emails are a great way to reach us. Those are monitored by teams. So full teams who have eyes on that and are responding. If you have any questions, reach out to us. Maybe we'll see you again next week. We definitely appreciate your time today. Thank you for joining us. That window launches on Monday. So look for an email to announce that with the link to the website, and we'll go from there. So maybe we'll see you next week. Happy New Year. Thanks for joining us.